way some models did, leaving their bodies in order to let their minds wander. Weaver hated that, and he could tell when it happened. Energy and a degree of muscularity left the body. You wanted stillness, but not the repose of a cadaver. Even when she was in a pose, lying back on the bed, for example, that would have allowed her to relax so completely she could fall asleep, she never dared. She was still, but she was there. Perhaps even more remarkable was her lack of self-consciousness about her body. Weaver knew she was not immodest or vain, yet she disrobed in front of him as openly as... What was Weaver thinking? As his wife? Harriet had her own art, finding the odd angle or obstruction that permitted her to undress out of his sight. Back when she modeled for him, she often used the screen and stepped out draped in the sheet he provided. But this woman, when Weaver first told her she could undress behind the screen, she looked at him as if he were an idiot. "I'm going to be naked before you, yet I should hide myself while I get that way?" She undressed like his daughters. That was it. She undressed as easily and efficiently as Emma and Betsy had when they were young and he'd supervise their baths. A task lay before them that required they be unclothed, so they quickly attended to the matter. The carpenter picks up his hammer. The artist takes brush in hand. This woman shed her clothes. Nakedness, her craft and art. Occasionally, Weaver's curiosity, or was it his perversity, led him to test the limits of her talent. He devised poses difficult to hold, like this one, which required her to kneel on the bed but keep her body's jointed parts strictly aligned and perfectly angled, head in line with shoulders and hips, arms straight down at her sides, knees bent at 90 degrees. Weaver wanted all the curves in this pose to come only from the parts of her she could not control, from those magnificent breasts, that gently rounded bulge just above her pubis, the flare of her hips, the long, slight swell of each thigh, as if her eroticism were asserting itself without her consent. Weaver thought that forcing her to hold that pose, how her trapezius muscles must have knotted themselves with the effort of holding her head up, how her knees must have ached, might break her down, might force her to ask him for relief. It did not. Weaver had also hoped, when he first conceived of the pose, not merely out of a mild malice, but out of aesthetic intent as well, that it might at last reveal the secret of her. It did not. Sonja had often wondered why all men carried their rifles in a similar manner. Had they been taught? Had they simply copied other men, their fathers, as their fathers had before them? But on that day when she walked to the barn, with Henry's Winchester cradled in the crook of her arm, she realized, given the gun's configuration, its length and weight, there were only a few ways to carry it. It was the same with babies. Sonja had heard people talk of an instinct for motherhood, and she had silently scoffed. If one wished to hold a baby, one simply lifted it, without thought or education, and certainly without knowledge in the blood. Babies and rifles. Their shapes furnished the necessary instruction. Carry us this way. And though she would have needed instruction to tell her where on the animal to press the muzzle of the gun, her husband had provided that lesson on many occasions. He'd told her about the small brain that horses had, though Henry always said it with affection, and if the horse himself were present, Henry would tap with his index finger that white diamond high on the animal's forehead, where the hair seemed to grow in a different direction from the surrounding russet coat. At Henry's tap, the horse always blinked, and when the lids closed over those great liquid globes, Sonja waited in vain to see tears squeezed out. Yes, if you could only cry, she thought. If you could only show remorse. She stood in the barn's chaffy dark, her nostrils stinging with the smell of dung, mildew, kerosene, and sweat-soaked leather. She levered a shell